Hey, and welcome to Neverwinter with Aragon. Today I would like to take the opportunity to show you guys one of my most perfect runs within the Infernal Citadel. This is the newest dungeon that came out with the release of Mod 18 at the end of this January. I currently believe it's one of the hardest dungeons currently that is in the game. The other dungeons have just been scaled and are just getting easier and easier, especially since they are all put into a random queue and they are expected to have a much lower skilled player base essentially to be able to complete them. Anyway, so with the Infernal Citadel, you first begin with killing all the mobs at these steps. Once you've managed to finish killing them off, you'll be able to speak to those three demons that you saw back there. Each of those demons grants you a certain power which will help you just in this kind of phase here. You're in this kind of arena with all these chains dividing it up into different sections. And the powers that the demons basically offer to you is one of them, as you just saw there, is to break the chains, or at least help break them. You need two of them to effectively break the chain. Another one basically has an aura which will like stun them, and another one has kind of a pincer attack where you can basically interrupt the devils from summoning a load of other ones. So essentially it's fairly straightforward. You just follow along this path, break the chains and kill the devils. None of the mobs here do any particular amount of damage, so I'm currently staying in single target because you will see we get thrown straight away into the first boss. So as the tank, you may as well stay in single target at the very beginning. So currently as a Paladin tank, I'm using Relentless Avenger there. I have Vow of Enmity also on hold, and also Smite. Those are generally the best single target powers for basically getting damage and aggro. I also am saving my daily Divine Judgment for the first boss. You can see there that demon, he was about to hit me. If I let that hit me, I would take damage over time. I believe it's like 100k per tick. You want ideally the healer to cleanse you for that, otherwise you'll enter this fight on really low HP. Somebody else took another buff, so that means you have to fight against the other demon, as you saw just recently there, another portal opened. So I begin this fight with a Relentless Avenger, getting into his face, and then I keep spamming Smite on him and doing as much damage as I can to make sure the DPS don't take the aggro off me. You kind of have to time out your smites. Don't try to spam everything at the very beginning, because you may take it for like a while, and then you'll have no divinity left, and the DPS will just take it back. So what you want to do is ideally block as much as you can. You can see there, I got hit by its tail spike and I got pushed back. Ideally, you don't want that to happen to you. I'm using the Forge Hammer of Gaunt against this boss because there is something buggy with him where he will crit, and back when I was first doing this dungeon, I got one shot by this boss a few times and that was rather nasty. So I take the precaution to use the Forge Hammer nowadays. This is his like big attack, that one. It's just always after his tail spike attack. So after you kill the boss, you're able to go to a campfire there, reset any of your skulls if any of you died. So what I like to do is now switch to the Sigil, and then switch to Templar's Wrath instead of Smite, and Burning Light instead of Relentless Avenger. You could say using Bane instead of Templar's Wrath might be better, but I prefer Templar's Wrath because it has a big area of effect, and it also has the effect to give you increased threat, so you'll hold the mob's attention more better than if you just were hitting them with Bane. If you just use Bane, you're relying on yourself to do enough damage that they basically focus you instead of the DPS. Vow is a great kind of AoE hard taunt, so instantly turn to you. However, I definitely recommend hitting a few Templar's Wrath before you actually would use your Vow. So you initially kill all these guys, and then you have these three braziers that you want to. So what I'm doing here is just waiting until the DPS, the fast guys, get those braziers, and then we can head off all together. So once all those braziers are collected, we group back up, and I proceed onwards. What you want to do as the tank is kind of group all the mobs together. If you're playing with a party which doesn't have a lot of DPS, ideally you want to just go group by group, since it will be much harder because the fights will take longer, you'll take more damage, and the healer would then end up having a harder time to keep everybody alive. You can see those red AoEs on the ground. As a tank, it isn't so important to even really worry about them, but as a DPS, it's crucial. It's crucial that you dodge out of those. Those can pretty much one-shot you if they crit, and if you've got a low amount of HP, they can also one-shot you. And it's these guys. It's those Cambions that cast those red AoEs and basically burn everybody. So you want to ideally target them as quickly as possible if you're a DPS. You can see two of them again. Cambion sentries are camping the doorway. I purposely didn't lure them with the rest of everybody because they just cause a lot more chaos, and especially the DPS will just die a lot easier. So you just finally kill off these mobs that are in front of the stairs, and then you'll be able to enter into the Infernal Citadel itself. This place looks very similar to Castle Ravenloft, you know, the halls with all the mobs and stuff. Anyway, what you want to do here as a tank is you want to kind of hard taunt the mobs, so like cast Templar's Wrath on them, and also vow every now and again when it comes off cooldown. If the DPS are being DPS whores and just want more damage, they're generally going to hit the mobs as you're pulling them, and then they'll end up taking the aggro, so you need to keep an eye on that. If any of the DPS lag behind, they're just going to die pretty easily. You can see I nearly got smashed there. I'm getting nearly smashed again. I popped my sigil and everything looks okay. The healer's finally caught up. Had to use 1 stone of health there to make sure I lived through that. But yeah, essentially just keep moving around. Try to make it so that you're not in the middle of the group. Otherwise everybody gets combat advantage against you. Awareness is not really a stat you want to cap, so you may as well just move your ass and you'll be fine. And again, basically you get through the door and it's basically this similar. But yeah, you can see I basically just lure all the mobs to the door, and then I pop my sigil down, and we just kill everything. At this point, I want to save my daily for Divine Judgment for the second boss, just to make sure I have that, and I can do that initial burst of damage. You can see that red AoE on the ground. That's something you definitely ideally want to dodge. It's the knights that make that, and it fears you, and you basically can't do anything, and you're pretty helpless. If there's a ton of mobs there, and the healer's not on the ball, you can die pretty easily via that. So that's basically all the groups of mobs. You have some after the second boss, but not too many. You just have to kill these final 2 sentries before you enter into the second boss. So as a Paladin tank, I want to switch out again to my single target loadout, so I would use my Relentless Avenger at the beginning and switch also Smite out for Templar's Wrath. So first I use Relentless Avenger, then I hit him with Smite and Vow, and you hit him with your daily as soon as you get combat advantage by getting behind him. So initially I just wait until he does that fire burst, then I back up out of that red AoE, and then I believe I'm gonna pop my sigil pretty soon. Nope, we had enough DPS, so I didn't have to proc my sigil at all, and we phased him. He phases when he hits 75% of his health. These 2 imps spawn, they grab the nearby players. Essentially, ideally what you do want is that you get grabbed by an imp, because you're a tank, you've lots of HP, and you won't die as easily. You can see there, I was just standing in the fire with my shield, just to take some damage so I can regain my divinity, so I can spam smite some even more. You can see I'm continually just using my smite and vow when it comes off cooldown, and I ideally want to just use my daily for Divine Judgment. This recording was like a month ago, I believe. Since then, I've come up with a new strategy to actually fight this boss. I like to just rotate around him to the right a little bit when with that AoE, which causes that little dot of fire. And that way, the boss doesn't move. But this is a older time when I was less experienced, but it was one of my smoothest runs, so I thought I would show it to you. It's one of the only recordings I really have as well. So yeah, you just saw there when he hit 50%, he also phases, spawns those 2 imps, and it's basically the same. The DPS have to hide behind the pillars. As a tank, you don't want to hide behind the pillars. If you hide behind the pillar as a tank, he loses line of sight with you. He doesn't know who to target, so he basically chooses anybody and just goes for them. until he can see you again. There we go again. At 25% he phases again. 2 imps spawn, and you basically want to kill them and free the chained guys. And the DPS just want to hide behind the pillars. Unfortunately for this guy, we didn't manage to get him out of the imp quick enough. Tried to use my daily, but it was a fail. You can see that those two actually survived the blast. It's possible to do so. They had a decently sized shield from the Paladin, so they were pretty lucky. Here I pop down my sigil. I'm in the middle of the fire. This red dot. Ideally you do want to move it out of the way, especially when you're a weaker tank, you don't have as much HP, or you don't have such an experienced healer. There again, at 5% of his HP, he phases again. And there we have our imps chaining the DPS again. Fortunately, never chaining me. You want to, every time he phases, ideally move away from the fire so that if the imps do get you, they don't pull you into the fire. And that way, you won't die. Unfortunately for that DPS there, she didn't manage to get behind the pillar quick enough. So we killed the boss. Nearly died there, actually. And there I switch out to Templar's Wrath again from Smite. And now I'm just trying to switch to, I believe it's Burning Light. I'll just do it now after you cross the stones. With those stones, you basically just want to jump from the stones and move across it as quickly as possible. Do not follow somebody else, or yes, you will fall. Because as soon as you jump on the stones, they have like, I don't know, a few seconds before they actually drop away. So here we just have another cluster of mobs. Just kill them and move on. So after killing the mobs, you move up this hill. And there's actually an imp just to the right here around this corner. As the tank, I generally just jump behind the imp so that anybody who attacks the imp gets combat advantage. However, you can actually just run past that imp. And then you just kill a group of the mobs here. See that knight, ideally you want to kill him as quickly as possible so he doesn't fear anybody. And after you killing those guys, you see those mobs up there on the pedestals? You can actually just avoid them. Creep along this wall, none of the imps will get you, and those mobs won't get aggroed. Now as the tank, I'm just gonna rush in, get caught by those 2 imps, and just sit here. Nothing much I can do, and just hope the DPS will get me out in time, and the healer will keep me alive. The DPS get me out of one of the imps, I get feared, and they get me out of the second imp. And then we just kill off the mobs here. You have to kill all these mobs before you're able to actually get to the third boss. If you push any of them off on the wrong side, they'll end up just running all the way back here, and you just end up wasting the time. So as soon as you've killed the last of the mobs, you can just jump down onto these platforms that just appear, and then just aggro all these mobs again and just kill them. This is essentially the gates before the final boss. So we finally killed all the mobs, go to the campfire, and I switch out my powers. Switch to Smite and Relentless Avenger, keeping Vow pretty much all the time for AoE and single target. Also, I like to switch out to the Forge Hammer of Gone instead of the Sigil, as this boss doesn't generally do much damage over time. He doesn't attack very often. He just has that big tank and healer check, and that's about it really. You're thrown straight into the boss, you can skip the cutscene, and then I basically just use my Relentless Avenger and like smite once so that he doesn't breathe fire on a DPS. Immediately after, you'll get those red dots on you, and you just want to place them in a corner. Ideally you want to coordinate which corner you're all going to go to at the beginning. Fortunately for that DPS, he actually stayed on the lava, I think accidentally, and you get basically one shot. If you're a tank and you have a lot of HP, you can actually survive a hit or two while in that lava, but not very much. If you have enough DPS there, you can see we actually skipped the tank and healer check, and he chooses a DPS and he just charges at them. You can see I'm actually standing in all of the red and using my shield just so I can regain more divinity. Here again we have the exact same mechanic. Everybody gets a red AoE and you just want to coordinate where you're going to put it. Here again, he spins. He will always spin after he gives that phase where everybody gets one of those red AoEs. So you can always prepare yourself for that. And I believe it's here now. The Hellfire engine is going to make the heal check. Basically, he grabs the tank and breathes lethal fire all over them. For that, I like to use my Forge Hammer just after he releases me on the chain. And if you have an Elven Battle, you'll be able to get out of that chain effect much quicker and be able to pop my artifact. So that's what I have. An Elven Battle rank 14 basically has like an 80% reduction to stun durations. So I'm just taking the full benefit of that to be able to get through this heal check much easier. Here he spins again after everybody has been given one of those red AoEs. And you just want to rotate around with him. You can actually just dodge through the fire most of the time, especially if you have a Paladin healer and have a shield. You won't take too much damage if you just go through it like really quickly. Here's another heal check, basically a tank and heal check. He stuns me and I pop my Forge Hammer as soon as I am unstunned. I'll still be chained and he'll still be breathing fire over to me, but I'll be able to activate my powers. I use my Divine Judgment whenever I have it up, as long as I have CA, just so I can do more damage and hold the aggro from the DPS getting it. On this boss, it's not actually so important that you have the aggro, it's only at the crucial part of the tank check when you actually need the aggro. He can switch just after he chains you. He'll chain you, and if DPS takes the aggro or does enough damage, he'll switch immediately and breathe fire all over that DPS and they'll die. There's no way they'll survive. So once the boss hits 10%, this is actually when he starts doing nothing. We had quite a lot of DPS, so he hit 10%. He entered his rotation where he was doing the tank check again, and yeah, we literally just burned him. This run was fairly fast. I believe it was 23 minutes long. It was not the fastest run, but it was pretty smooth. Like, I had no deaths, everybody only died really once, except that one person, that one DPS, just died 2 times. If you like what you saw here, consider leaving it a like. If you're new around here, consider subscribing. And goodbye for now.